Hello, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hello, and welcome back, everyone. It's time to talk Monza after, honestly, that pretty fun race. On the call today, we have Melissa, Ito, Drea, and myself, LeAnne. Honestly, I just want to get right into it with Ito and Melissa talking all things Friday and Saturday.
We had a drive-free practice session for the Italian GP, which felt like a rarity, honestly, after the likes of Monaco, Spa, and most recently Zandvoort. We also saw an F1 rookie take on a FP1 run, as per the rules. Just for those who don't know, an F1 rookie is a driver that hasn't participated in more than 2 F1 races during their entire career. And not a lot of teams have done this so far this season. And as mentioned in predictions, we saw Felipe Drugovich, the Aston Martin reserve driver, replace Lance Stroll for that session. Liam Lawson continued to stand in for the injured Daniel Ricciardo at AlphaTauri, and the drivers overall had to deal with a alternative tire allocation using only 11 sets of tires instead of the usual 13 over the weekend.
We saw the news that a new hybrid energy system graphic was set to debut this weekend at Monza. This was a really cool graphic to see throughout the race weekend. And at the end of this session, we saw Max finish in P1, Carlos in P2, and Checo in P3.
And Charles and George rounded out the top 5 in terms of lap times.
At the start of the second session, we saw Lance lose power, and that's what it looked like to me, at least. And it stopped just in the middle of the track. This was the first red flag of the session, and this caused for the time to be paused.
I actually dug into this a bit more, and Aston Martin actually said it was a fuel system issue that caused Lance the issue.
Thank you, Ito, for that. And then we saw in the last 10-ish minutes of FP2 where Checo found himself in the barriers, causing the second red flag of the session. At least the crane this time around didn't lift the Red Bull so high where other teams couldn't see the bottom of that car. We knew how that team felt last time. But in the last few minutes of the session in general, we saw drivers test out their slipstream, and it was kind of cool to watch how they slingshot each other those extra few miles, kilometers, wherever you are, per hour extra. Cool to watch.
But because of this, Max sadly also faced traffic-related issues during his run. And Max, he was spicy on the radio because of this.
Yeah, literally GP went on the radio and he was like, "Did you learn anything from this session?" And Max was like, "No, not really. I literally just spat out nothing that was in my mouth. I was just like, oh my God." It was funny. The sassiness just made it that much more exciting. And at the end of the session, we did see the birthday boy himself, Carlos, finish in P1, followed by Norris in P2 and Checo in P3. And as we got into FP3, we continue to see Carlos just showing out this birthday weekend in his Ferrari. This gave us Tifosi some hope for a great weekend at our own home race. And overall, we saw the session close out again. Carlos, P1, followed by Max in P2 and Lewis in P3. That's a good comeback from 17th to P3 in different sessions, if you ask me.
Now, as for qualifying, as mentioned earlier, teams only had 11 sets of tires per car this weekend, instead of the normal 13, all in an effort to make F1 more sustainable. This, however, also meant that in qualifying, the teams had to run hard tires in Q1, medium tires in Q2, and softs in Q3. In Q1, Max Verstappen set the fastest lap time with 1 minute 21.573 seconds. And sadly, both Ferraris didn't adhere to the minimum lap time required. But thankfully for our Tifosi, didn't face any further actions after the steward's inquiry, even though most people were expecting them to face some sort of sporting penalty like a grid drop. Several drivers faced difficulties in the session, including Zhou Guanyu from Alfa Romeo, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon from Alpine, Kevin Magnussen from Haas, and Lance Stroll from Aston Martin, as they all failed to meet the required performance standard and were therefore knocked out. In Q2, where medium tires were required, Carlos Sainz initially set the fastest time with a lap of 1 minute 20.991 seconds, followed closely by Max, just 0.044 seconds behind. Charles then surpassed both with a final lap of 1 minute 20.977 seconds, but ultimately, Verstappen took it back and topped them all with a last-minute effort of 1 minute 20.937 seconds, narrowly preventing a Ferrari 1-2 by a mere 0.04 seconds. The drivers eliminated for this session included Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson, both from AlphaTauri, with Tsunoda missing the mark by just 0.013 seconds, Nico Hülkenberg and Logan Sargent.
The last qualifying session was so exciting to watch, especially towards the end. We saw Carlos cooking all weekend, and I just remember watching it at one point and seeing Charles get his provisional pole, the Tifosi going wild. I was just like, yes, let's go. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm good. I actually was heading out to see some fellow PGP girls, so I had to make a drive. And I was just like, yeah, I'm good. Whatever happens, happens, but I'm happy here we are. And I would have finished otherwise. But luckily, our Ferrari boy Carlos got pole again on his birthday weekend, and it was well deserved. I watched the replays later on, and it was literally Charles in P1, and then Max got it for a hot second, and finally Carlos. Ferrari was able to get that 1-3 start at their home race with Max in P2, George in P3, followed by Checo, Alex, Oscar, Lewis, Lando, Fernando, Yuki, Liam, Nico, Valtteri, Logan, Zhou, Pierre, Esteban, Kevin, and Lance.
We all know by now that if Nico Rosberg posts a team's pit box on his Instagram, that the team will have a bad race. While he didn't exactly post a garage this time around, he did post a start and finish straight with the caption Forza Ferrari. Let's just say the Tifosi wasn't happy. Like, if you looked at the comments on that Instagram post, I wouldn't want to be Nico right now.
Twitter was popping off as well too. It was funny to see like the quote tweets and everything, the screenshots. But I think Nico cursed the whole grid in general because all the cars were in his famous selfie, and we saw what happened at the start of that race.
Damn, I didn't even think of this. This is hilarious.
We'll get to that soon on what happened. But of course, we hear about it every time we go to Italy in general about how dedicated the Tifosi are. And it always kills me, the dedication of the fans, the signs, the flags, the totems, you name it, of Carlos, but especially of Charles, how they have him as like a saint. They have him on flags and everything. It kills me, like the dedication and all. I just love me a good sign and a totem. But all this to say, I really hope sometime in the near future I do get a chance to go to Monza for a Grand Prix, especially with my PGP girls. To be around that energy, I can only imagine how like electrifying it is, and it's fun, and just, I don't know, it just looks like a fun place to be.
When they finally were on the grid and everyone exited off so we could start our formation lap, we started the formation lap. The thing is, Yuki had an engine failure very quickly after they got rolling. And so the start was abandoned with orange flashing lights while they figured out how to move him.
The sad part about Yuki's engine failure is that it is his second did not start at Monza after him having only been on the grid for 3 years. So we've only seen Yuki race in Monza once.
I just thought of this, but maybe Yuki has his own Monza curse. What did he do to deserve this? Because my heart breaks for him, and it's his home team's race as well. And this happens of all weekends. We know the rumors that's been going around. So poor guy, just poor guy.
Definitely poor guy. But this whole thing meant that the starting procedure had to be redone with another formation lap, and therefore the total number of laps was reduced from 52 to 51. Also, Alfa Romeo was said to be under investigation as some of their mechanics ran out onto the grid too early, basically before they were authorized, before the restart procedures. But so far, we haven't heard anything, so hopefully they're safe.
I don't know why, but when the mechanics were all starting to run out onto the track from like that little space they had, it reminded me of that SpongeBob episode where like SpongeBob's going crazy and like you go into his brain, it's like the little office is on fire. They were all just going with their carts and it just embodied the same energy to me. Going crazy. It gave me a good giggle just seeing all that happen. Just reminded me of that.
Now that you mention it, it does fit, especially with how like each department in the office has a different color and each team has a different color. It fits. I get it. So by lap 5, Carlos was still in the lead, but Max was right on his tail, and Max kept complaining that Carlos is sliding everywhere. And then Gasly had the first pit stop, but it wasn't the greatest. He lost a few seconds because Alpine couldn't lift the front of the car.
I mean, Carlos's hanging on there in lap 5 is great. But can we talk about LeAnne for a hot second? He started 13th, and by lap 13, he had already made up 2 places and was up in 11th. And in a car that hasn't really been the best this entire season. Plus, it's only his second race. Hello? What's this guy smoking or eating or something?
I'm proud of LeAnne and how he's been performing. Like it says a lot about him in general, but it brings up the question: if AlphaTauri or Red Bull don't sign him in the future seasons coming up, you guys think another team will? I mean, he's shown how fast he can adjust to an F1 car. So who's to say like another team won't take a chance on him as well?
Depending on how the rest of silly season goes and stuff going on in the near future with new teams coming in or switching names, maybe they will. Perez overtook Russell, but they were off the track. So whenever it came back around, Perez had to give the space back because if not, the FIA will tell them. And if too many cars are in between them already before they realize it, then they just have to give them a time penalty. So they just got ahead of it because we all know how much we love the FIA.
Oh, so much. But can we talk about when Perez went on the radio saying George pushed him off? And then you see like on screen the replay and George was nowhere near Perez when that whole incident happened. And you just hear Crofty say Perez must have been pushed by an invisible force field. Tears, literal tears were going down my cheeks when I heard that happen.
Yeah, and on lap 14, the inevitable happened, and Verstappen took the leap from Sainz. There goes our dreams and hopes.
At this point, we're just used to it. We know he's going to get in front. It's just a matter of when. But at this point, Perez also officially has overtaken Russell, and currently the grid is Red Bull, both Ferraris, another Red Bull, a Mercedes, both McLarens, and then another Mercedes. So now it's a matter of who will try the undercut and come into the pits to shake things up.
And shake things up they did. Then, by lap 20, a flurry of pit stops happened as Sainz, Leclerc, Verstappen, and more went in for new tires, leading Piastri to get P1 with Norris in P2. This is the first time that Oscar has ever led a Grand Prix in his career. Not a race, because he has led a sprint before, but a Grand Prix. Russell and Ocon were also under investigation for Mercedes going off track and gaining an advantage, resulting in a 5-second penalty for Russell, as he was too far ahead of Ocon with cars between them to simply give the place back. The 2 McLarens ended up also under investigation for causing a collision in turn 1 while they were 1-2. However, as they are teammates and therefore on the same team, at the end of the day, it didn't really result in anything.
Hamilton was the last to pit since he had started the race on hard tires and he could overcut everyone. It did drop him back to 10th place, but it looks like the team may convert to a 2-stop strategy because at the time, everyone who had transferred onto hards were kind of wearing through the tires too much. And then at lap 33, Perez overtook Charles for 3rd place. So that was actually pretty exciting for the overtake. They were fighting for a while. And then by lap 41, Max had a 9.2 second lead in front of the whole grid, which is inevitable. At this point, we're just like, how far ahead can he go? And then Alonso had 10th. And hopefully he could keep that place because he needs to gain as many points as he can to maintain third in constructors in front of Ferrari for Aston Martin and third in the drivers' championship in front of Lewis.
And while all that was going on, we didn't realize that Ocon retired. Piastri also had front wing damage on lap 42 and had to pit due to contact with Hamilton. The stewards investigated the incident and gave Hamilton a 5-second penalty as a result.
When that incident happened, I literally gasped in Spanish, like you see in those like dramatic like telenovelas. Drea knows what I'm talking about, probably. Literally, I cupped like my mouth and everything when this happened. I just wasn't ready, and then I just hear like my boyfriend like stand up, and he was like, "I hate Oscar." He's like, "I hate him so much," but don't worry, he doesn't really. It was just like a spur of the moment, like he was just like feeling that way. But it wasn't a good feeling, as you can tell from our two reactions.
Yeah, and the last spice of the race really came on the final lap, when Logan got a 5-second penalty for colliding with Bottas, and the Ferrari boys almost took each other out on that lap too.
The lockups that happened when they were fighting, I was not okay. I literally was just like, okay, just finish up the race and get the team points, especially at a home race. Like the last thing you want to see is them crashing and DNFing at the very last few laps.
Literally, I was surprised that Ferrari actually was letting them battle. Because why? Why risk it? The potential of something happening and not podiuming should have had Fred being like, yo, chill out real quick. And they finally did come over the radios and tell the Ferrari boys as they entered that last lap, no racing to the end. Did they still end up look like they were racing till the end and kind of ignore that radio? Yes, but they finally had at least said it.
And Max gets his record-breaking 10 consecutive race wins in a season, beating our lovely Seb's 9 consecutive race wins in the 2013 season. So congrats to him.
I did not fucking hear them say no racing. I thought he said race to the end, and I was like, they'll do it. So I didn't hear the no racing, so I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't.
It was pretty low radio. It was very last second. But this also, isn't it?
Hold on.
15
Why do the radios always sound like mumbles? How did, like, Lando's engineer sounds like a mumbling, gargling marble guy.
Their radio checks.
It's so bad.
It's so bad. And their radio checks just.
If they don't have the captions, if they don't have the captions like on the side, I don't know what they're saying. I'm just like, great.
Yeah, I'm like, what the heck ever? Okay, sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No, you're good. Their radio checks, I know they do them. We all know they do them. Do they ever fix things? I don't know. Like that one time that it was either Max or Lando was like, radio check, and somebody said loud, and he's like, but not clear. And they're like, no. But isn't this now Red Bull's 15th consecutive win for a Grand Prix? And so now they're like in the record books. It's going to be really hard to beat them in the future, even though Mercedes won so many years in a row.
They're just constantly breaking records right now.
It's Red Bull era, their reputation era, and they are living for it.
Literally, I was about to say that we're really in the Red Bull era. And as much as it sucks to see sometimes, we just have to respect that we're witnessing history because I feel like it just goes in cycles. We have this time and then it kind of like calms down and then it happens again. So,
yeah, funny part with that is since basically Jenson Button won with Braun in 2009, 9, no one else but Mercedes or Red Bull has won a Constructors' Championship. Let that sink in. Yeah, no one, like, they've just been trading off. Like, Red Bull started dominating in 2010, so Button won in 2009, and then Mercedes came in 2014, and then it went back to Red Bull. Like, what's happening?
So what you're saying is we're going to have a Lewis 8th world champion title coming up soon if this cycle keeps up.
Fingers crossed.
9th.
No, what you're saying is Charles is entering his reputation era next, and Ferrari will finally get a chance.
Charles has been in his reputation, quote unquote, for 2 years, and it doesn't do anything. He has no like fierceness in his body.
Charles has been in his depression. He's out here making music to deal with his emotions. Okay, he has not entered reputation era yet.
He's in his Lewis Capaldi era.
Yes.
I mean, on that note, it could actually happen because historically, if you go back to the early 2000s, Schumacher won 5 titles in a row, early 2000s, right? Then Fernando came in for 2 years. And then it was Kimi in '07. And what if that happens again? Because Lewis was dominating for 5 years. Max came in for 2, now likely 3. Let's be real. But what if Ferrari comes back for that 1 year? What if?
One can only hope. One can only hope.
But let's put our hopes and dreams aside for a hot second and talk about what actually happened. Ferrari overtook Aston Martin in constructor standings with the 3-4 finish because Fernando just wasn't able to hang on. And honestly, it is awesome that they managed that, especially after their start of the season and especially at Monza. And honestly, after seeing the Red Bull 1-2 with the Ferrari and Sainz in 3rd place, all I can say is I'm just glad to see a Ferrari on the podium after a race, because as we said before, Red Bull's dominating. And honestly, the Tifosi deserves it. As far as my predictions go, though, I predicted a Perez win, and he did score 2nd, which is a win in my book. No pun intended. Other than that, both Max and Carlos only made it into the top 10 in my predictions, yet they made it onto the podium IRL. I mean, the rational part of my brain said, a Max win is to be expected, and my Tifosi heart says, as long as Ferrari finishes higher than I predict, I'm happy. What didn't work out for me in terms of predictions was my prediction of a Yuki podium when he didn't even start the race. And of course, my prediction of Esteban getting a point resulted in him DNFing instead.
I personally had no predictions for this race weekend and was just hoping for a great one in general, and a great one it was. Carlos fought hard today and in general the whole weekend, and he definitely deserves that spot on the podium. The Ferraris put up a hard fight with the Red Bulls. I, in general, just wish Charles put up a tougher fight to finish on the podium. It would have been a little bit more entertaining. Don't get me wrong, that side to side, the whole overtaking and everything was fun, but it would be cooler to see him try to take back that spot after he lost it. But you know what? I'll just take what I can, and I'm happy as a Tifosi. Seeing Max win again isn't the funnest thing to watch, but like I said, we're witnessing history, so congrats for him for breaking another record. Let's see what else he breaks or makes at this point. But I do have a question. Was the Monza curse even in the room this year? To me, it looked like the curse was out for the other teams, but just missed Red Bull completely. So this just shows how untouchable that damn car is this year. So let's just hope the curse is now broken for future races.
I also had no predictions because they never work out. But yesterday, I did wear my Charles shirt after qualifying, and I wore my Lightning McQueen Crocs to celebrate Ferrari on pole. And the Crocs definitely helped the Tifosi, okay? Because Ferrari got on the podium, which doesn't usually happen lately, and because Luigi only follows the Ferrari. At this point, we all know Max is winning at the Grand Prix, so now it's just exciting about who gets to be on his guest spot for the podcast.
I'm actually so glad that Carlos did give him a fight for 15 laps and didn't back off. Like, that was, yes, he overtook him, but it took quite a while for him to overtake. So for me, that is a win. And I honestly love when Max has a challenge. Like, I get it. We get that he's going to go and win, but it's the fact that the guys are still trying to fight him. And it's amazing.
Honestly, that fight reminded me of the George Russell quote that says, I'm still going to fight him. I'm not going to let him pass by just because he's Max Verstappen in a Red Bull. And honestly, I feel like that's what everyone wants, even Max, because when he has an easy race, you can hear on the radio how quote unquote bored he is.
It was even him making the joke like, oh, that was naughty, but he still was enjoying it. Like, you could hear he was having fun. Like, he enjoyed that Carlos did a little bit of a maneuver.
Did he say simply lovely this time?
Oh, I don't know.
Because usually he says simply lovely when he's like had an easy drive. So I think this one actually means he had to work a little bit. He actually had to make some efforts.
Yeah, I think he actually enjoyed this race. And like you could feel that it made like this was the first race that in the group chat no one was like, I got bored. Like the last two races, everyone's like really enjoyed the race. Well, maybe Drea. Look at her face.
I'm not gonna lie, okay? Where I live, the race starts at 8 a.m. and I went to sleep really late because of like family celebrations yesterday. So I did fall asleep around like lap 40. But don't worry, I did go back and rewatch.
Drea only enjoys 2:00 and later races.
AKA stateside races, because that's the only time it will ever happen.
No, it's also Australia, but it's 2 a.m.
I was just about to say you only also enjoy Australia because you stay up late.
Yeah.
But you can look forward to Singapore next weekend, in 2 weeks, because that's a night race for Singapore. And also Japan, because that's 2 a.m. East Coast, so that's 1 a.m. your time.
Yes, I will be living my best life for those.
Meanwhile, LeAnne and I are going to be struggling with like one eye open at like 2, 3 a.m. along with Ito, us East Coast girlies, because I'm a very much a 10:30 in bed sleeping person. So those night races, they're fun, but a struggle.
I mean, honestly, those night races see me go to bed at like 8 p.m., setting my alarm and waking up, and then going back to bed. I can't do it any other way.
Speaking of the future races, if I heard correctly, I think Max will actually be crowned 2023 WDC at the Singapore GP, if not Japan. So that's pretty exciting. That's like only like a few weeks away. And at this point, it's always just like, do you really need to win? Do you? If you're like that close.
I think they said he had to be like 140 points in front of everyone, which will be very soon. But I'm just wondering if it'll be as awkward as last year's when he was like, so did I win? Did I not? And then they put him in that weird room and he's like, can I go back now?
I love that he didn't want to be crowned that day. He was like, I don't think you guys are right. Like, I don't think I should be doing this right now.
Yeah, I think this year it will be a bit more clean cut, honestly, because he's so far ahead. But definitely, it won't be as fun.
I was saying today with my mom and Amy, PGP Amy, she's on a train right now because she was hanging out with me this weekend. We were just like, Max could literally just crash out and just like chill and still be fine. Like he can literally just enjoy the rest of the season. But knowing Max, he'll still just push because it's how he was raised. So he'll enjoy it, but like he can just chill about it. So Max, I love you, but chill for a sec, please. Let us all have fun.
I think at this point we should just do an experiment with him of every race. We just do a raffle of where he should start and how long we think it'll take for him to get to the front of the grid.
I actually love that.
You know, just to spice things up a little bit. And at least he has to overtake and do everything else and he'll have some fun. But like he's not risking his position anymore.
I love when Max gets penalized during anything just so he can be sent back. Like, just let him start from the pit lane. He's still gonna win. Just like let him start from the pit lane. He'll actually probably enjoy his time more if he gets to fight. It'll be so good. He could let any Red Bull kid like coming up just take the place. But like, yeah, you can drive the car. I already won the freaking season. So just let's test out these other kids to replace Checo. What? Who said that?
Depending on how Daniel's wrist goes, I think they already have a plan for Checo and everyone else on the grid. But I would like to see them give chances to others, especially since Max, like, we know he's won. We know he's going to win. We know wherever you put him, he's going to win. Might as well give others a chance.
They should just have a separate podium just for Max. And then P2 is the new P1 and P4 is P3. But I mean, with Max, I would love to see him race like from all the different positions because I've seen graphics where they like list out all of his positions that he's ever been on the grid that he's won from and like how many times he's won from. And he's been on like, I want to say 10 or 11 positions that he has won from, the lowest being 14th. And that just goes to show he can do it.
Okay, new idea. Some of the teams will not like this one. But you know how they said at one point, they were like, I think we said it, where we should just let Adrian Newey just like help all the other teams at some point. Okay, instead of that, I say we give all the other drivers one chance in the Red Bull car and see how they translate the technology and the setup of the Red Bull to their teams to see if they can kind of mimic it or what can be improved on their own cars. So it comes down to like how the driver feels about it and how they see the differences. And then the team's got to figure it out.
I love that idea. I think that's so good.
So you basically want drivers to turn into kind of mechanics too at the same time? Like, I mean, some driver, like the good drivers historically speaking, like Michael, have had that like mechanic brain almost in like to help their teams improve the car. Like I remember, for example, it was Kimi. One race, he was like, there is a crack at the front of the car near my left foot or something. So his team checked it out. They were like, no, there's no crack, no nothing. And he's like, okay, fine. He gets back into the car and he says, crack's still there. Find it. Lo and behold, after the race, they get the body x-rayed and there was a crack. So I feel like a good driver can translate whatever he feels into mechanic improvements. And that's why I actually love that idea, Drea, because it will also show who is a good driver, like in a holistic sense, that doesn't just drive the car.
You can also tell in radio calls, like certain drivers that are like, I feel this, I know, like George is very good. I know some people get annoyed when George comes over radio, but it's because he knows when something's off on his car. Like the Mercedes boys are very good at being like, no, something's wrong, like you didn't fix something. Charles has even gotten a lot better, and I think that comes from who he grew up with and how much he's like actually like is obsessed with his career and racing and everything like that. So I do, like, I know everybody gets like annoyed when they come in and they're like, oh, they're complaining. I was like, no, they're acknowledging that they realize that something's wrong. Wouldn't you want somebody to call out something that's wrong to fix it so you're not embarrassed as like a mechanic that you didn't get it right and your driver did?
No, exactly. It's interesting. It's always like cool to see. I don't really understand like half the time what they're talking about when they have issues with their car. So that's why it kind of annoys me. But again, once I learn, it makes sense. So it's okay. But with that, we have about 2-week break coming up. We have 2 weeks until Singapore. And I'm excited to see what happens within these 2 weeks because silly season's still upon us. We still have some empty seats and some potential drivers' careers may be put to a little pause. So we'll have to see what they do to keep themselves busy. Maybe they'll go around the Singapore area and explore a new country. I would like to see some content coming up. But with that, we're going into our pre-outro. And this week, we're going with Driver of the Week. And with that, it's Carlos. Because not only is it his birthday weekend, but he also had one hell of a race weekend at Monza. To even securing Driver of the Day from our official F1 media fans vote of the day. So love that for him. Congratulations to Carlos and happy birthday.
Honestly, what a great race weekend we had. My TikTok prediction at least got P3 right. So we're doing something here. They included Oscar, but just gave him Driver of the Day, when in reality, he got fastest lap. I don't know how he did it. He came out of nowhere and secured that fastest lap once Max already got his checkered flag. So congrats, Oscar. Who was your personal Driver of the Day? Let us know on our socials. Everywhere we are at Paddock Girls Podcast, except on Twitter. There you can find us at Paddock Girls Pod. As always, don't forget to rate, review, and share the podcast wherever you listen from, like Apple, Spotify, and now even on TikTok. Thanks for joining us in the paddock. See you next time. Bye, Craig.
See you, Craig.
Later, Craig.
Smell you later, Craig.